The motion is, this House has no confidence in Her Majesty's government, and I look to Elizabeth Webb, Standing Committee, to open the case for the proposition.
Years ago, I sat in this debating chamber and I listened to this very same debate. I remember very clearly leaving against the motion, thinking, I must have at least some scrap of confidence in this government. The opposition speakers sounded so very, very convincing. They said lots of facts and figures. One of them had even graduated in PP from Oxford, so I thought must know something about running a country. 2 years later, and I am completely disgusted and disappointed with what this Conservative government has done to our country. A government which has supported the interests of big business instead of working people. A government which has left young people more in debt than ever before and virtually disqualified from home ownership. And worst of all, a government which has fueled the most toxic rhetoric against immigrants that we have ever seen at a time where the need for global unity and understanding is most needed. I am sure that tonight's opposition speakers will put forward a very convincing case. They will have done their research and prepared their speeches, and they will say that their policies are most effective for everyone. But tonight, and indeed always, it is of the utmost importance to judge this government not by their words, but by their actions. They may be able to use socially inclusive rhetoric very convincingly, but I am here tonight to declare loudly that we will not stand for a government which continues to pick on the worst off in society and help the best off. And 10 minutes is not nearly enough time for me to condemn this government and the injustices which it has caused in this country. But first, it is my pleasure to introduce the opposition speakers tonight. Speaking first is Julian Kirk, a second year at Magdalen College. Julian already has several characteristics, which means he's well equipped for government. He reads PPE, just like David Cameron. He's up and coming in the Oxford Union, just like Michael Gove was president. But most importantly, his hairstyle far surpasses that of Boris Johnson. So I'm convinced he'll fit well into any Conservative cabinet. Speaking second is Lord Lansley, the former Secretary of State for Health and Leader of the House of Commons. He is particularly known for putting forward the controversial Health and Social Care Bill. He was awarded a life peerage simply for abolishing one single element of the health service. It makes you wonder what they'd have given him if he had abolished the whole thing. And finally is the Right Honourable Andrew Mitchell MP, a current Conservative MP and former Chief Whip of the Conservative Party. Mr Mitchell used to be president of the Cambridge Union and is well known for his involvement in Plebgate. I don't know too much about the Cambridge Union staff, but I do know that the Oxford Union staff don't take too well to insults, so I hope he didn't have too much trouble coming into the Union Gate this evening. Mr President, these are your guests and they are most welcome. A country that works for everyone was Theresa May's ambition, proclaimed on the steps of Downing Street on the day she acceded, unelected, to that very role. Funnily enough, she seems to have forgotten about her noble goal by the time of the Tory party conference. There, she supported a policy to force companies to reveal the number of foreign workers they employ, effectively to shame companies into employing more British workers. She also attacked the left-wing lawyers who tried to enforce human rights law to prosecute soldiers who have committed illegal acts while in combat. Finally, she continued to plough ahead with her policies to support grammar schools, despite the fact that they're opposed by more than a dozen of her own party. So it turns out that Theresa May doesn't actually want a country that works for everyone. She wants a country that works for a very select, elite group of people. These are the people who can afford to hold offshore bank accounts. They're the people who receive private tuition so they can pass the 11 plus to get into grammar schools in the first place. And they're the people who can afford to have their welfare removed if they happen to have an extra room in their home. While May talks of a country for everyone, we actually now have a situation where the rich are 64% richer than before the recession, and the poor are 57% poorer. This government is widening the gap between the rich and the poor by helping the privileged and leaving the underprivileged without homes, hospitals, or education. But it's all for the economy, I can hear my opposition speakers saying already. We need to balance the books. It sounds quite reasonable, doesn't it? After all, that's why the Tories won the last election, because of their sound economic policy. However, the idea that Osborne fixed the economy while he was in power is absolutely absurd. We have suffered the biggest fall in real wages since the financial crisis than any other advanced country, bar Greece. And just earlier this year, we moved from being the 5th largest economy in the world to the 6th. Furthermore, Hammond completely abandoned Osborne's austerity measures, saying we will no longer target a surplus just a few weeks ago, effectively making a U-turn on Tory economic policy. No wonder, since a report by the UN warned, and this is really important, the austerity policies of the Conservative government are a breach of international human rights law, and that cuts to social benefits disproportionately harm women, young people, ethnic minorities, and disabled people. How on earth can we have confidence in a government which has supported this type of behaviour for 6 years, and despite being told of the atrocious effects of their policies, has only just now started to reconsider? I tell you, we absolutely cannot. What's more, the way the Conservative government has treated the NHS is appalling. Safe in our hands was the phrase which Mr. Cameron used. But is it really safe? NHS trusts have run up a record deficit of £2.5 billion. Currently, there's a disgraceful record of 3.9 million people waiting for minor surgery. Targets for A&E waiting times, ambulance response times, and diagnostic tests are all slipping away. Bed blocking caused by cuts in social care by cash-strapped councils at its highest ever. Our hospitals are simply choked up. If this is not enough, why has the government chosen to pick a fight with junior doctors? The NHS is not sustainable now or in the future without a major increase in funding, and this needs debate and leadership, which is not at all forthcoming from this government. The country is also in desperate need of more homes, but indeed the Conservatives, wedded to the old-fashioned idea of home ownership, have focused on boosting demand rather than supply, with the Right to Buy scheme, which allows housing stock to be given away and knocked down prices and transferred to the private sector where rents are increased. Meanwhile, 650,000 homes have planning permission but are not being constructed. They've also removed housing benefit from those with a spare bedroom, where there is a very shortage of homes for those people to move into. The government can no longer turn a blind eye to councils who are struggling to house the most disadvantaged in our communities. And now finally, the elephant in the room, the Brexit vote. I'm not going to talk about whether we should have voted Brexit or we shouldn't have. Rather, it's May's job, indeed it's the very reason why she became leader of the Conservative Party, to lead the country throughout the process. Instead, she's chosen to give us a lesson on tautology by saying, Brexit is Brexit. How very enlightening of you. Even yesterday, 4 months since the referendum, the most she could tell us was, and I quote, "What we are going to do is deliver on the vote of the British people." Extremely helpful. The The reason why the pound is plummeting is because no one in this country, and that includes the government, has the foggiest idea what Brexit means Brexit actually means. At the time when this country most desperately needed leadership, Theresa May has shown herself completely incapable of leadership. And what's more, she's been actively defied by 80 members of her own party who are fighting against the absolute insanity of a hard Brexit. Not only is this situation bizarre, but it's also dangerous. It endangers the jobs of people as businesses look to investing elsewhere while the instability of this economy continues. And it is undeniable to say that Theresa May has completely failed in her role in this way. And so, the motion of no confidence falls flat on a government which should be and is completely failing to protect the vulnerable, support local neighbourhoods to build homes, and help families feel secure. This government has the dogged energy to pick a fight with junior doctors and push through the bedroom tax. But do you see the same energy being applied to make Starbucks and Google and Facebook pay their taxes, or to pursue Sir Philip Green? While there's no end of money swanning around to fund huge flawed projects like Hinkley Point or HS2, projects which, by the way, keep their friends in high places in business, there isn't a penny in the bank to support migrants who are desperately trying to escape the horrors of Syria. Never before have we had such a divided country. Whether your boardroom pay is going through the roof, or you're stuck in the warehouse at Sports Direct and your pension's in the hands of Sir Philip Green. Whether you're our parents' house-owning generation, or us, the renting generation, who can't afford to pay a mortgage because we're still paying off our student loans. Whether you're thriving in London, or you're in Osborne's northern powerhouse, where your economic value is under half that of someone in London. Or finally, whether you voted Remain or Leave, the gulfs in our society are just growing and growing. And Mr. President, I say that we can never, ever have confidence in this sort of a government. Thank you.